Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is October 1st, new month, meaning new updated prediction for this month between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So this is my personal prediction. If the election was held this month, obviously it's not, it's going to be held in November, but if it was held today, obviously, who I think would win, this has nothing to do with the polls. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss on my content, press the like button, share this video if you are interested. We have memberships, so you can find the links to that in the description section. So right off the bat, the states filled in gray are the battleground states that will be competitive but are not the true toss-up states, not really 50-50. Obviously, they lean either one way or another. But the toss-up states are going to be filled in yellow, which I think are truly the ones that will be decided 50-50. It's really a toss-up are Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. All of these Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania are the real toss-up states in my opinion. But the battleground states filled in gray will be somewhat competitive, but still they will lean either to the left or to the right. Now, interestingly enough, I do have New York being battleground this time around. I just think with brand new polling coming out of the state, it's showing that it's gonna be a very close race. And with the 2020 polling year, yeah, it could be decided within single digits, but I will get to that later. So let's start off with the electoral map. So right off the bat, there are some typical likely states now moving into the solid column for either of these candidates. For Kamala Harris, it's going to be Colorado. I do think that will be solid blue for her this time around. I do expect her to surpass double digits, getting around 10 percentage points in this state, which is slightly worse than Joe Biden's 2020 performance in the state of Colorado. It is getting bluer. I just think it's a little bit out of reach for Donald Trump at this point in time. And then the typical, usual, likely state for Donald Trump, now moving into the solid red column, is going to be Iowa. I don't expect this to get close whatsoever. A while back, actually, a highly rated pollster had Trump up by 18 points in the state. I also expect him to get double digits in the state, probably close to 13 points if I had to make a guess. With that margin, it's pretty much a lost cause for the Democrats at this point in time, especially in the future as well. And now moving in to the likely states for both these candidates, starting off with Kamala Harris, I do think New Mexico is going to be likely for her. As of right now, if the election is held in October, I do have her winning it by a margin of somewhere in between 7 to maybe 8 percentage points, possibly 6 if Trump is lucky enough to do better in Albuquerque, obviously a Democratic stronghold county. It has a lot of white liberals in that county, but still, I do think nonetheless, Trump can make gains among Hispanic voters. Maybe that can make the state a little bit somewhat close, but still, I do think Harris should comfortably win this state. And I also do think that Minnesota is going to be likely for the vice president as well, mainly because of Tim Walz, obviously her VP. Obviously, he's literally the governor here, and he's very popular as well. So I do think he will carry her over the finish line. Minneapolis really shifted towards the left back in 2020. A lot of that had to do with what happened to George Floyd. Obviously, we're not going to be seeing that this time around, so it could get closer because obviously Democrats don't have that momentum. But I do think the women vote can really carry Kamala over, especially with that Tim Walz VP effect as well. And I also do think that the state of New Hampshire this time around is going to be likely for the Democrats, Kamala Harris, just how it was in 2020 for Joe Biden. If the election's held on October 1st, I do have her winning it by a margin of around 6 percentage points, a likely one. I do think this is actually one of the more bluer swing states out of them all, mainly because it has a lot of college-educated voters. And what does Tim Walz do as governor? He really focused on education, and I do think he can carry Kamala Harris to good margins, sizable margins in the state of New Hampshire. I just think she will do good in that state. And I also do think that New York, now we're going to get to New York, is going to be likely for Kamala Harris. Brand new polling has her up by only 12 to 13 points. At best 14. Literally at best 14, guys. This is a state reminder that Biden had won by 23 points. And literally right before Election Day, the week before, on polling averages on 538, they had Biden winning this state by close to 30 points. That's a polling error of roughly 8%. So I'm not saying the election will be decided by just polling error alone. It's not. But still, even if you apply that, it's going to be within single digits. At this point in time, I have her winning it by 10 points if I had to make a guess. Now, when Biden was in the race, on average, he was only winning it by 7 to 8 points if he was even lucky. And keep in mind, Trump had 2 rallies in this state. I think it can really get scary close if New Yorkers don't like what they're seeing with the Democratic Party. And at this point in time, that is the case. Therefore, with that reasoning, I do think it's going to be a lot more closer than what people expect this time around. But still, obviously, Donald Trump is not going to get near a victory in this state. And as for the likely states for the former president, Donald Trump, I think Texas is going to go to him by somewhere in between around 7 to maybe 8% on election day. I do think because this is a border state, obviously that's a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address immigration whatsoever, and especially considering that Hispanic voters are really shifting towards the right. After we take a look at new polling data showing that the Hispanic vote can get extremely close, and some polls actually show Donald Trump leading with the Hispanic vote, which is scary for Kamala Harris. She's performing worse than Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. So keep in mind, if she's polling worse than Hillary Clinton, that means Donald Trump can very well not only surpass 300 electoral votes, but also win the popular vote, which in recent videos past, I think he very well can. And then as for Florida, I also do think it's going to be likely for Kamala Harris. Now, surprisingly, polls on 538 is showing that it's going to be close, which I just don't believe. They also overestimated Biden by, I believe, like 4 points last time. So I do think Trump's going to win it by 8% this time around. You take a look at Miami-Dade County. It flipped from blue to red to DeSantis in the midterms back in 2022. He literally got nearly 20 points. So, I mean, I won't be surprised if Trump gets close to 10 points, maybe even get double digits in a best case scenario. But as of right now, to play it safe, it's going to be likely for Donald Trump. Also, Ohio is going to be likely for Donald Trump. I do think he can get probably 10 points at this time around, especially considering just like Tim Walz from Minnesota, obviously you have J.D. Vance, the senator from the state. You have that home state advantage. It'll help him electorally as the VP selection. And now that we have the likely states out of the way, moving in to the lean states for both of these candidates, starting off with Kamala Harris, I do think that there will only be one lean state for her, and that's going to be the state of Virginia. I do think if I had to make a guess, I do think she's going to win it by probably around 5 to maybe 4% if Trump is lucky enough. You take a look at recent polling from the state. Kamala is doing a little bit better than Joe Biden because right before he had dropped out originally, literally the week prior he dropped out, Donald Trump is actually leading on the Real Clear Politics averages by 0.4 in the state of Virginia. Now she has gained somewhat ground, obviously, because Joe Biden's campaign was literally dead. Obviously had no enthusiasm going to him whatsoever. So obviously she's going to gain a little bit of support, but it's going to be close. But I do think it's going to be a lean margin for her, similar to Hillary Clinton in 2016, maybe closer if Trump's lucky enough. Also, the governor here, Glenn Youngkin, who is very popular, actually endorsed Donald Trump, is trying to mandate paper ballot voting only on election day. That means the state would be called faster, and that's really beneficial for Donald Trump at the end of the day. And then the lean states for Trump, I think, is going to be Arizona, Georgia as well, 2 of these southern states, and one from the Rust Belt, surprisingly, Pennsylvania. I think those will be the lean states for him if the election was held today in the month of October, which is literally 1 month right before the election. So let's start off with Arizona. Just like Texas, I mentioned earlier, it's a border state. Obviously, immigration is a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She's severely performing worse among Hispanic voters, and I do think there is a possibility Trump does flip Maricopa County. And even if he doesn't, there is a real possibility Harris wins Maricopa, but Trump still wins the entirety of the state of Arizona as a whole. That's only if she wins it by 1 point if you compare this to 2020. Because keep in mind, originally Biden had won Maricopa by 2 points, but I mean, he still almost lost his state. It was a margin of just like 0.3, 11,000 votes. Also, if Trump is able to make gains among independent voters, undecideds on election day, also there's a lot of McCain-style neocons. A lot of them actually broke for Biden in 2020 because he was seen as more as a moderate candidate and Trump was too extreme. I think a lot of them can go back to Donald Trump this time around. I don't see Kamala Harris being, moderate as Biden did in 2020. Also, just like I mentioned earlier, the border, I think that's too much of an issue. I don't think Arizonans are going to trust Kamala Harris. Therefore, Trump's going to win it by 2 percentage points if I had to make a margin guess. And as for Georgia, I also think it's going to go to Donald Trump by close to 2 points, similar with Arizona. These states actually vote very similarly. Back in 2020, both these states actually had very close margins. Keep in mind, Georgia was 0.2, Arizona was 0.3. So, yes, they vote pretty much in the same direction this time around. I have it going to Donald Trump, just like in 2016. But actually, in 2016, Georgia voted to the right of Arizona. And don't get me wrong, in the future, Arizona is going to be a very blue state, obviously. But as for Georgia, just like Virginia, Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, is trying to pass election day laws, which I believe they already had, in which all absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and won't be accepted any later. That's really beneficial for Donald Trump. And if this state were to be closer, Kamala somehow ends up winning this state, the only way for her is through Atlanta, the metropolitan area, obviously in the suburbs. Atlanta is pretty much the only key thing here that Kamala can rely on, but she's not going to win it. So Trump's going to win it by 2 points if I had to make a guess. And then the tilt states for both of these candidates, I think there's going to be one tilt state for Kamala this time around, and that's going to be the Rust Belt state of Michigan. Now keep an eye on that large uncommitted vote. Roughly 100,000 voters voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries. Now that was against Joe Biden and not Kamala Harris, but even with that, you can argue that Kamala didn't even receive a single vote in the primaries. And I think the Detroit suburbs are trending towards the left. Because Kamala Harris is so unpopular, I honestly can't see Trump winning the state as he literally did in 2016. But because Gretchen Whitmer, the governor here, who's very popular and is backing Kamala Harris, I do think she can carry her over the finish line. And I do think that Tim Walz's effect. I don't want to overhype the VP selection. I don't want to overestimate its impact. But I do think Tim Walz maybe can carry. And also, Michigan was the bluest Rust Belt state in the 2020 election, 2016, and the Obama era as well. So the main reason why I have Kamala winning it was because Biden won it by literally almost 3 points. It voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And then the last 3 states remaining with 32 electoral votes left up for grabs. I do have Donald Trump winning all of those states by tilt margins: Nevada, Wisconsin, and North Carolina as well. Now, the main reason why I have North Carolina this close, which I usually don't, is because of Mark Robinson is really dragging down this race, hurting Donald Trump with the margins. He's going to narrow it up. And I do have Josh Stein winning currently by 5 points. Maybe it can get closer than that if he's lucky enough, but really his scandals are really hurting Donald Trump in this race, but obviously not enough for Kamala to win. Trump's going to win by about a point this time around. Which is actually less than his 2020 margin. I just think Mark Robinson is just that bad, but obviously not enough for Kamala to overcome the votes to even win it. And then as for Nevada, I think Washoe County is going to flip to Trump this time around. You take a look at the Vegas area, Clark County. I think Trump really can make significant gains among key voters like Hispanics. I do think a lot of them are shifting towards the right this time around, which would help him to win this state by probably around 1 percentage point. A lot of the polls recently actually show Kamala doing really good in this state. She has tremendous support according to the polls, but I do think the polls are all over the place right now. I just don't trust them. And even when Biden was in the race, I still, I think they underestimated Donald Trump. I think he could have done even better. But as for Wisconsin, the last and final state, honestly, it comes down to those 20,000 voters that Biden had originally won this state by. The main reason why I have Trump winning it is because, obviously, it was the reddest Rust Belt state in 2020. The complete opposite of Michigan, voted to the right of both Pennsylvania and Michigan as well, and the Obama era as well. So I think the polls in Wisconsin are actually one of the worst. When it comes to polling error, Wisconsin has the worst polling error. And they had Biden up by 6 right before Election Day, and he only won it by literally a tilt margin under a percentage point of just 0.6%. Therefore, I do have Trump winning it. Obviously, the only reason why Biden won it was because of Milwaukee County. If Kamala doesn't get high turnout in Milwaukee County, then she's probably not going to win this state. And I do think Trump can flip Door County. And I'm going to go back to Pennsylvania. In fact, I don't think I talked about Pennsylvania really. Erie County, that really is going to determine who wins this state. Not only that, there's obviously a few other counties like Northampton, which I think Trump's going to win. Bucks County is going to be very important, but I do think Trump will flip Erie County this time around. Nikki Haley got a lot of that vote share in the Republican primary, but that's not going to matter, as she did endorse Donald Trump. Now, as for Pittsburgh County and some of these stronghold Democratic counties, I do think because, Butler County is right next to Pittsburgh, he got shot there. I do think maybe there's a possibility he does get high turnout around there, which really could hurt Kamala Harris, especially in Centre County as well. And right now, according to the polls, surprisingly, Pennsylvania is voting to the right of Wisconsin, which is really weird. I don't know if that's going to happen. But 297 electoral votes for Donald Trump. So Kamala Harris is 241 if the election is held today in October. This is my prediction as of today. Let me know what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below. One last fine reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss all my content. Press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we have membership, so you can find a link to that in the description section if you are interested. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.